Okay, hey, we're doing another episode of On the Rest from Off the Cuff to have a really cool double feature for you guys from the brand Sheffield. Now, they're a historic brand revival, so if that name sounds familiar, that's absolutely why. A little bit about them. Well, their founders' pretty much main mission was to create modern interpretations of the original Sheffield Allsport timepiece that captured the essence of its predecessors while incorporating updated and improved features and technology, which is a pretty strong, I'd say, recipe for success these days, right? In terms of the type of watch, these are clearly dive watches. Some key characteristics design, which you're looking for divers. Of course, you're going to want water resistance, typically some type of screw down crown. You're going to want something that's tough, legible, with a dive time bezel, and a diver's extension is always nice if on bracelet. We have two different variations of the modern All Sport 1. This is both of them actually do have the classic gray dial. One, of course, you can see has a left-sided crown, and the other one has a right-sided crown. Also, in terms of the bezel insert, you're seeing a steel bezel versus an aluminum bezel. So, nice little variations on fun timepieces. I will say that, of course, I'm not traditionally a big quartz guy, but I will say probably since the C quartz reintroduction, I've definitely had my eye on more quartz options and have been feeling a bit nostalgic for, these types of grab and go timepieces, especially with higher specs and lower costs. So I think the Sheffield Allsport is pretty well timed in terms of its resurgent now. So with all that said, let's go ahead, zoom the camera out, get these pieces in hand, and take a closer look. Okay, guys, now before we dive in, first, big shout out to Gary Griffin of our local Chrono Group SD Instagram group. Essentially, it is a watch gathering entity, a club, if you will. And, essentially, I wouldn't have been able to get my hands on these particular pieces because at the time of filming this, I believe most of these units have sold out. But this is a new brand revival, so this is just kind of their initial run. There will be future runs, and I think it'll be nice to still feature these here, just so you guys can get an idea of, kind of what they offer, some of the high points and whatnot. So again, a big shout out. And then also, guys, if you do have any local watch groups, I highly recommend you attend those things because it's just a way to connect with some like-minded folks. But with that said, let's go ahead and jump right in. So a little bit about the specs here. It's going to be 40 millimeters in diameter, 13 millimeters thick, 48 millimeters lug to lug, stainless steel, brushed and polished. You're also getting a sapphire crystal, as you can see, flat sapphire with an inner AR coating. And a very interesting point is that it has about a 96 click bezel. So 8 clicks to get to 5 seconds. So, 8 clicks, and then there's 12 markers. That turns out to 96 versus 120, of course, would be if there was 10, and if it was 5, it would be 60 clicks. So that's how I do the math on that. So very interesting. I'm not sure if that was something that was purposeful. Of course, it does give you exactly what you need. You can still use it as you would any diver bezel. You go ahead and set it, boom, and you do get a little bit more precision. I do like it. There's a tiny bit of back play, but it has a nice balance of smooth and clicky there. And of course, very grippy bezel action there. I would say maybe slightly sharp, but did I mention that these go for $108 direct, guys? Yeah. There's a reason why these sold out so quick. $108. You're getting sapphire. You're getting, of course, a very traditional kind of Rolex style case. You're also going to get a very solid and reliable Miyota movement here. It's a quartz movement. And 200 meters of water resistance, screw down crown, and a wear profile that makes it very easy to wear. Yes, this is something that you can wear at a very in a very active capacity and not really worry about. You even do get a pretty nice FKM rubber tropic style strap with quick release spring bars built in, as well as drilled lugs there in the case, so that you can swap out. You can throw it on a NATO, anything like that you want. But you can see there, guys, this is a really nice thin profile. I'm sure some of you have seen this profile before. It does look very familiar, but nice thin mid case, and then kind of sandwiched behind a little bit of a case protrusion there on the case back, and then of course the bezel. And you can also notice that the bezel itself has a bit of a matte blasted finish, which is pretty cool. So they that actually ties into the matte insert here, and the lume on this is actually quite impressive. So I'm looking forward to sharing that with you guys. This is a very, very simple watch. Of course, you can get kind of the destro option with a steel insert that is definitely more reminiscent of something like a Yacht Master. So you do get to play with a couple of the options. These aren't even all the options. They have a bunch of other ones as well. But yeah, it's relatively handsome piece. Yes, it is going to be a bit derivative, but honestly, like, it has the fully graduated index, which you don't always get, and I think that's a great look. Also, the indices, the handset choice, nice little pop of red on the seconds hand. These are pretty cool pieces. Again, they're not grail level, but these are definitely something where, hey, you pick one up, you can wear it. Oh, look, check that out. So there's a difference. You're getting brushed bezel versus matte bezel, and you're also getting, of course, that steel insert versus the aluminum coated insert there. So not that it's coated in aluminum, but I'm pretty sure the insert's aluminum, and then it has this nice matching gray coating, which goes really well. And you can see that these do reflect light and absorb it in a really nice, pleasing way to the eye. So the movement inside is a Quartz Miyota 2035. These dials are matte gray. They do have applied indices, polished hands. Again, that nice, legitimate 200 meters of water resistance, 20 millimeter lug width, and then of course you're getting these FKM Tropic style straps with the quick release spring bars. So there's definitely a lot to like here, and there's I would say if you want something a little flashier, you got something here, and then if you have something, your tastes are a little bit more subdued, then you can have an option like this. And guys, if you've been a fan of the channel for a long time, I'm not typically a big quartz guy, but I will say that with the resurgence of some really cool and fun kind of historical quartz models like the C Quartz, the Magnum PI watch, I've definitely had my eye out for quartz. It's just kind of fun, especially at this price point, at right around $100. I mean, that's pretty great. You can wear this and just kind of almost as like a G-Shock alternative in terms of it being kind of a beater, right? And you can take it out, but it also does have a little bit more versatility than something like a G-Shock, where it's going to be very dedicated into sports. I think something like this you could wear in transition, of course, and it's not going to be a big deal, especially if you're a big collector. You have a bunch of different watches. I know the dive watch space is so wild. So many people have multiple dive watches. Sometimes it's a whole collection of dive watches. I'd say in San Diego, most of the folks that I meet have just collections of dive watches. So it's nice to have just a fun variation that has a very recognizable and iconic silhouette and aesthetic, while giving you a little bit of a talking point in terms of the history of the brand and some of the things and details behind it, and its new motivation for resurgence. So I think that's a lot of fun. But with that said, let's actually get these on the wrist and see how they wear. Okay guys, as you can see on my 7.5 inch wrist, this wears just like you'd expect a 40 millimeter diver to wear, which is pretty much right within that sweet spot. And here we go on the other wrist. Some of you are rejoicing to see this crown on this wrist because I am technically a lefty, so I wear all of my watches on my right wrist. But man, this thing looks really great. Of course, if I get my wrist a bit too close to the lens there, you're going to get some perspective distortion, and it's going to seem much larger. So what I like to do, of course, is just keep my wrist nice and low and then tighten up the shot here. So you guys can still get a more detailed look while just keeping a bit of a truer aspect ratio on how this may appear on your own wrist. You can see very nicely centered there, and you can see a good amount of strap from the top. Lays quite nicely, just like you'd expect. Again, guys, nothing revolutionary here. I'd say it's kind of funny with wristwatches today. You know, there was definitely the great race for making everything as accurate as possible, then as slim as possible, then as a mixture as complicated and complex as possible. There's been so many things in terms of the goals of this technology over the years, and now we're kind of in this renaissance era of, hey, how cheap can we go? Like, how good can we pack into a very affordable bracket? So it is a fun time to be a watch collector, especially when, it's a lot of the offerings within the space are from enthusiasts like yourselves, right? Like the founder of the resurgence of this brand was really, of course, inspired by his original Sheffield Allsport. So I think that's really fun, and it's just, again, it's a cool time to be an enthusiast. I would recommend this for an enthusiast, whether you be giving it as a gift to somebody or for something to wear for fun on your own side. I don't think this is something a casual kind of non-wristwatch person would really take a lot of interest in. Although, of course, it does have a lot of those visual cues that have become quite mainstream over the years. So with all that said, let's actually get these pieces off the wrist, set up for some loom shots, low light transition, and closing thoughts. Okay, let's go ahead and hit the lights here. All right, as you can see, like I mentioned, really, really cool loom. Guys, yes, I'm just going to focus on this model because it does have the loomed bezel. The steel insert is pretty much exactly like this, just without that extra loom. So I thought, why not just focus on probably the more mainstream choice of the two. So with that said, you guys know, hey, it's a diver. It should have good loom, and you're right. But one thing I always like to work in, of course, is a bit of low light transition, because you're not always going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying direct sunlight. A lot of times you're going to find yourself coming in and out of buildings, walking underneath overhangs, or maybe just hanging out underneath the shade of a tree. So it is nice to see what these colors, textures, and finishes render like in less than optimal lighting, to maybe even include a bit of harsh lighting, which could expose any types of factory defects. But all you're going to see here is just a pretty well put together little watch, guys. Like, I'm definitely very impressed. I like the play of matte on that bezel insert. It's great. It's not as glossy. It definitely gives it a more sporting vibe. I like that gray dial, just the kind of gray combination. I feel like it helps it stand out and feel a bit more modern and contemporary versus being, one of the millions of kind of big crown, vintage, rejuvenated options that are out there. And, I'm hoping that eventually they will absolutely bring back the design language from the original Sheffield Allsport, because I feel like that is definitely a nice historic watch that brings in a lot of those skin diver vibes from the 60s. But man, I will say that in terms of, from a marketing standpoint, this is going to do well. I mean, it has done well, right? These have pretty much sold out already. So at least in the initial run, right? So this is something that a lot of people really love and really enjoy, and sometimes will even purchase multiples of when it comes to just a very wearable tool watch, which, yes, some of the legacy brands have moved away from that, especially when you start thinking about the costs. It's like, why would you wear something like that when you when you would damage it, even if it is spec'd and themed to be a true functional tool watch. Why would you risk destroying that, right? Especially in today's economy, you're going to want to keep a nice hold on some of those nicer watches, and make sure that you keep them in nicer conditions. I know I like to, of course. I do appreciate the wabi sabi of it all, where any nicks or anything that kind of helps me tell the story of my own wristwatch. But yeah, I think stuff like this is really cool, because a watch like this you could absolutely wear out, and really just have a whole lot of fun with, and with very little kind of repercussions in terms of financially, right? So I think that's cool, and I'm not crazy about the idea of having to swap out batteries, but you know what? Servicing watches can be more expensive than buying them, so I think that a battery swap is something that probably is less intimidating, and less of a hassle than I think some of us mechanical timepiece enthusiasts make it out to be. So guys, closing thoughts for me on the wrist. This wears like a 40 millimeter sub-inspired diver should. Nice and thin, still decent heft despite the quartz movement due to the super solid case build, which was nice. In terms of model variants, definitely check the site links for options and availability. And then again, don't be surprised if a couple of them are already sold out, if not all of them, by the time you watch this video. In terms of comparable models, guys, the market is currently saturated with Rolex Submariner inspired divers. Not too many at $100 though, with a workhorse quartz movement from a brand name with actual historical significance. So I think that's a nice point of differentiation for Sheffield within this space, and probably why they've been able to kind of catch on relatively quickly, considering the place in the market. I think that's cool that they sold so many so fast without really any coverage. So bottom line for me, while not super inspired, right? It's not like there's anything groundbreaking that's happening here. The Allsport one is just different enough to offer a great dedicated tool diver, that you really never have to worry about, with a semi-recognizable name brand to go along with its very recognizable design language, all for just over $100. So yeah, I think this one's doing pretty well for itself. I'm looking forward to seeing what they do next. So yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Do you guys collect stuff like this? Do these types of, more entry level but still pretty decently up-spec'd quartz divers, do they do anything for you? Let me know in the comments below. If you like the video, please do a like, and if you haven't already, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.